been searching for the best way to generate passive income in your life and heard that real estate is a great way to do it. But you're tired of all the so-called gurus who are all talk and no substance. Get ready to celebrate because Kevin Buck has spent 14 years successfully making it happen. This is the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Now, here's Kevin Buck.
Hey guys, Kevin Buck here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Our mission is to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income-producing real estate investments. Now, our guest for this week's show is surgeon and real estate investment expert, Tom Burns. Now, Tom is an orthopedic surgeon in Austin, Texas. He's a graduate of the University of Texas at Austin and Southwestern Medical School in Dallas. He received sports medicine training at the prestigious Steadman Hawkins Fellowship in Vail, Colorado, and he is a physician for the United States ski team. He has over 25 years of real estate experience, both locally and internationally, involving acquisition, development, and management of multifamily, student housing, land, manufactured housing, and medical office projects. In addition to his real estate experience, he has co-founded, managed, and sold a freestanding full-service hospital. Tom is a member of the Forbes Real Estate Council and is listed in the acknowledgment section of Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He is frequently featured in nationally circulated print articles and popular real estate-oriented podcasts and has spoken to thousands of fellow physicians about how to achieve financial independence. So with that, guys, I'd like to welcome our guest for today's show, Tom Burns. Tom, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Kevin. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining us here today. Excited to have you here and learn a little bit more about your story. And so I know that you've been on other podcasts, you've been out there, you write articles on a regular basis for different platforms. But for those, just in case for those that are listening, they have not heard of you, Tom, they don't know your background, they don't know your story, maybe take a few minutes. I'm going to pass the mic back to you and tell us a little bit more about yourself and ultimately how you found your way into real estate.
Yeah, you bet. I'm never feel I'm as cool as that intro sounds. I started my life as an orthopedic surgeon. Actually, back before I started my life as an athlete, that's all I did when I was young and wasn't going to get paid for it. So I went into medicine, went into orthopedics and sports medicine. That seemed like kind of a natural path. And so I was doing that. And then, you go to college, you go to medical school, and then you do a thing called residency, which is a 5 or 6 year training program to learn what you do. So I was near the end of that training. I started watching the guys that I was supposed to emulate, right? The ones I'm supposed to be like 20 years from now. And, I'm watching them make potfuls of money, but I'm watching them complain. Half of them were on their second or third marriage. They were at the hospital at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. I sat back and realized, look, I don't want their money if I got to have their lifestyle. So I was always sort of bent on freedom, adventure, and travel, and I'd been doing that up till that point. I wanted to keep doing that. So I figured medicine might have been just a bit of a declining industry, or I might get trapped within it. That was sort of my thought at the time. So I started looking for some income that wouldn't correlate with the medical industry. I started looking around. I had zero financial training. I had athletics and medical training. And so I just started and went to seminars, read books, talked to people, did things and made mistakes and lost money, and gradually over time started learning some things. I eventually, got to a point where it was time to jump in. So I just started buying stuff. And some would be winners, some would be losers. But over time, I got pretty good at one particular industry. And I bought more and more, and people started coming to me and wanting to bring deals. People came and started wanting to be partners. So that was good. And I had a nice little sort of a private little portfolio of properties that I was building up. And I got to a point where I thought that I wasn't learning enough. And you can only learn so much from books and podcasts, which didn't exist at the time, by the way. But and the internet was dial-up. So this was a long time ago. But I hadn't learned enough. So I went to somebody that did something I liked. He was a developer. He was big in real estate. He was a friend of mine. He still is a friend. And I basically said, look, I like what you do. Will you teach me? He said, sure. So for close to 2 years, I worked with him and for him and made $0. But I learned a lot about the development industry. We did land deals. We did build to suits. We were looking for medical properties, and that basically blossomed into a pretty large medical complex that he and I built together. I learned a lot through that development process. And in the process of learning all this, I was speaking at a real estate conference for a friend of mine in Arizona. And this was 2001. And he said, "This is Tom Burns. He's from Austin, Texas." And at the break, somebody came up and said, "We're moving from California to Austin. We need a contact. Will you be our contact?" And the reason I tell that story is that you never know where partners are going to come from. But that guy is my partner today in my private equity company, Startup Ventures. So it's all just been a building process, Kevin. I started knowing nothing and was a little afraid of making mistakes early, but I made so many of them, they got to be pretty commonplace. So I got over that and just made some mistakes, learned some things, and kind of ended up where I am. It's just been a slow tortoise project. It's the tortoise in the hare. I've been the tortoise. And so I'm kind of wherever I am today, that's where I am because of that process.
That's all right. Slow and steady wins the race, as we know. So you mentioned back in earlier on your investing career side of things. You bought some winners, bought some losers. You bought different types of assets. What were some of the first types of properties you bought? Were they just single family residential properties? Did you start with multifamily?
Good question. I started with single student properties at the University of Texas. Condos. Not a big fan of condos, but I still own some of those now because you buy them right. It doesn't matter what the homeowner's fees are. And so started with condos, bought one, liked it, and then bought another. And that's when people started coming to me. And, I could practically buy them sight unseen at the time because I knew the market so well. So then I started putting all those together and buying small apartments and then, probably due to my attention deficit, started doing some other things, bought some mobile home stuff and bought some other things, and never really bought a single family home. I bought one. It was actually a lot with 2 single family homes on it. It was pretty ugly. The money was good, but it was a pretty ugly place. The reason I bought it was because it had an AT&T tower on the back, and that place auto deposited enough money to cover everything in the project, and it was paid off within a year. And I didn't keep it very long because it didn't really fit my plan, but that was my only single family purchase, I'd say.
Got it. You mentioned something very interesting about the mentor, your friend that was a developer that you ultimately sought out advice from, and you took 2 years of your life. And I'm assuming you were a practicing physician at that time, or was this during residency? At what point in your life was that stage when you went to work with him?
Yeah, this was when I was full time. I was a young orthopedic surgeon, and I developed a bit of my own portfolio. So I'd cut back a sliver of my practice, 5%. I don't know the number, but just a small amount. So I was full time, and I still worked with him.
And so talk to me, explain or I guess lay out what that relationship looked like. I mean, so my situation was very similar. Back 20 years ago, I met a gentleman. He became a really good friend. He was not necessarily a friend of mine prior to, but he was many years ahead of me in his business and was a local investor. And ultimately, I went and worked for him for not 2 years, but about 14 months or so for free. Any waking moment that I wasn't working or, sleeping, I was with him at his office, out in the field, doing whatever he needed me to do so that I could be surrounded by him and learn as much as possible in a very concentrated manner. Tell me about what that relationship looked like between you and this mentor. What did you do for him? How was that value add in his eyes and vice versa?
Sure. He was just kind enough first to say, yeah, let's do some stuff. So I did the same thing every chance I could be away from the practice. And in fact, I prioritized so much. I so much wanted passive income and the income that came from real estate that I had enough control of my practice. I would take off. I would maybe avoid some income from medicine just to go learn. So as soon as I got out, I'd go be with him, and I learned. And at the time, he was just kind enough to teach me and show me. So he just sort of threw me out there. As we were going through that, he's teaching me what he knew, and we came upon a piece of land and this is where the value add comes in place. He came upon a piece of land that his mother's dressmaker owned. Basically, his mother's dressmaker came out and said, "You got to get me out of this." Well, it was a lot on a really busy street in a nice area of town, and he says, "This would be a good place to put a project." And so we talked one day, and he actually came up with it. He goes, "What about medical?" And so that was where my value add came. Is I ended up filling a lot of the space without brokers, just with physicians. And we put 16 lots together, and it was 19 acres. And it's a large project. So we filled phase one with a lot of people that I basically talked to and brought in. And so during that project, that's kind of where I learned a lot of my commercial development. And hopefully it was some value to him.
Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here with Sunrise Capital Investors. As you are hopefully already well aware if you've been a listener for any period of time, my goal has always been to provide you with as much value as I possibly can through my two podcasts, Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow and the Mobile Home Park Investing Podcast. As our audience continues to grow, literally, we've been downloaded millions of times by folks in over 125 countries. I've had thousands of people reach out looking to get involved in our niche, and that's the phenomenal niche of mobile home park investing. Now, for those that don't know, I've been a full-time real estate investor for more than 20 years now, and I've personally invested in and have owned apartment complexes, various commercial properties, hundreds of single-family rentals, and I've interviewed some of the most successful investors in just about every other asset class, and I've arrived at this one very simple conclusion. Mobile home parks are hands down the best investment I've found to date. Why? They provide investors with the best risk-adjusted returns out of any other real estate sector that I've seen. Investing in real estate can get complicated, and I really want to simplify this process for you. If you're someone who wants to diversify away from the uncertainty of Wall Street and allocate a percentage of your real estate portfolio to mobile home parks, but maybe don't have the time nor the inclination to personally locate good deals yourself, then our team will do it for you. At Sunrise Capital Investors, our team specializes in the acquisitions and management of undervalued and highly profitable mobile home parks. And we are now providing accredited investors with an opportunity to participate directly alongside our team in Growth and Income Fund 3. When you invest in our fund, you get immediate diversification into multiple deals we acquired off-market that are already performing and have built-in sweat equity. And let me say this, I believe that we are hands down the best in our space at sourcing highly profitable off-market deals. That's really what makes us unique in this niche and as investment managers. As stewards of your capital, we truly are aligned with our investors. We've structured our investment fund so that we as a company are incentivized in the same way the investor is, which is through the performance of the investment itself. In addition, we want to make sure that we not only make money for our investors, but that they understand how it's being made. That's why we provide our accredited partners with a private monthly podcast that walks them through the detailed updates on how their investment is performing. And we're very transparent, providing you with the good, the bad, and the ugly at times. And so if you'd like to learn more about the partnership opportunities with our team here at Sunrise, please visit us at investwithsunrise.com and request access to the investor presentation. It's absolutely free, and you'll get instant access to review the off-market deals that we've already purchased that you can co-own with our team. Also, feel free to call us at 833-CASH-FLOW without the O. Again, that's 833-227-4359, and our investor relations team will help you schedule an appointment to speak with one of our managing principals. If you have questions, go ahead and schedule the call. Let's jump on the phone. And with that, guys, I'd like to leave with one last thought. From the time that I wake up in the morning till the time that I lay my head down the rest of the evening, my number one priority with everything I do, whether it be recording this podcast, working for our investors, helping each of you reach your investment goals, to providing a great experience to each of our residents who reside in our communities, is to add huge amounts of value to everyone that I come in contact with. Now, with that being said, I look forward to the opportunity of bringing value to you through Sunrise and through this podcast. Thank you for your time. Now, let's go ahead and get back to the show. So what does your business look like today, Tom? I know that you are in the multifamily, most of your focus is in the multifamily space. Per your bio, it seems, parts, new development, parts, existing acquisitions, what have you. But maybe if you could just give us an overlay of what that looks like today for you.
The way it looks in 2021 is almost 100% development.
Okay.
This particular company started in 2009 when we developed our first large multifamily project. And then it kind of took a hiatus due to some medical issues between the two of us. And then we came back about 6 or 7 years ago. We made the conscious decision to stick with multifamily because we feel that it does well. We're both kind of gray haired, as you can see. If this is on video, you can see we've been through 2 or 3 recessions between the two of us. So we're kind of big on preservation of capital. We don't like to lose money. We've both done that. We've never lost investors' money yet. So stuck with multifamily. And we acquired early. Probably our last acquisition was back in 2017. It was kind of your typical Class B value add thing. And just the metrics in the we never did Class C, but the metrics in the Class B value adds just got to a point where we kind of wanted to move out of that frothy red ocean and into a little smaller blue ocean. And we had development experience. We knew that was our lane and we were good at it. It's got somewhat of a longer runway, but we started focusing on that. And for our company, we just don't like the metrics right now on purchasing Class B, at least in Texas. It can still be done for sure, but that's not our lane. So we like development. It's not better. It's just different. We can control the value. We know we're not buying something with any secrets because we're building all the secrets into it.
There's always skeletons on existing properties, some more than others, unfortunately.
Exactly.
So I know you're a big proponent of the HUD 221 program. Would love to speak to, and I've never utilized one of the HUD programs for any acquisitions that we've done over the years. I've heard a lot about it. Obviously, Fannie and Freddie are kind of they seem like the main food group when it comes to when you start speaking multifamily financing. However, the HUD program has got some unique components to it. One of the big ones that stuck out to me was a 40-year fully amortizing loan, non-recourse. I mean, it doesn't get any sexier than that. I'm sure that there are also some downsides to it, but so maybe speak to, why you guys utilize that program. What are some of the pros and cons of it? What have you?
Sure. Well, yeah, if you pull up that HUD skirt, it's not as sexy as you think over time. But we are. We use HUD. We're actually using less and less right now because of the speed to close. That's one thing you mentioned as we talked earlier is that HUD, on the good side, HUD's very nice once it's put together. It is. In fact, you get 40 years and 20 months of fixed rate because you can get 20 months of construction financing. Then the amortization starts kicking in and you get 40 years after that. And if you develop enough equity in your property, you can refinance it into an A7 or a 223F, which has another 35 years of amortization. So it's got some nice things in it. It's great to know that you fixed your rate for 40 years. It eliminates one of the 3 main variables, the others being property taxes and market. So we often try to eliminate the property tax portion too. So that's the good part about HUD. The downside is that it's a tremendous amount of brain damage to get a HUD loan. Not everybody can get one. You have to, not always, but it helps if you've got HUD experience. They like to see that. They want you to have a HUD experienced architect and engineer and developer and builder, that sort of thing. And it can take 9 months just to get a HUD closing. So you have to go through a series of meetings. You have to go to a concept meeting first and ask HUD, is this a good idea? Do you guys like this? They'll say, yeah, thumbs up. Go ahead and spend your $100,000 to bring it to another meeting. And then you bring it to that meeting and say, yeah, this looks pretty good. Then you spend another $900,000 and you get to closing. So now, and there's no guarantee of closing really until you get to the end. But once you pass that first meeting, once you spend about $100,000 and get a good concept meeting and an invitation letter, your odds are about 95% you'll get that long.
Got it. Did you fast track that by bringing a partner on board that had HUD experience, or did you go at it kind of alone the first get go?
We actually learned about HUD by mistake. So picture early 2009. We've got 16 acres of land. Our lender is GE Capital, and that's right in the Great Recession. So everybody said, sorry, we're not going to give you any money. GE pulled out. So nobody was lending. That's what the problem was. And somebody told my partner and said, why don't you try this HUD thing? And he's like, what's HUD? And so we went and learned about it. and literally got the loan because nobody else was getting debt. We were the only apartment project to come out of the ground in Austin, Texas in 2010. So you can imagine that was a really good project. So they worked with us and we got our first HUD loan. And so we got our experience probably just because of timing, because not so many other people were getting debt at the time.
Let's talk about you. Had mentioned that you've been through a few recessions. I mean, you've obviously been through. You've been doing this now for 25 plus years. So, talk to me about your business during those periods of time. I mean, any of the challenges that you faced through those. Especially 2008. 2008 was a big one. What were some of the big challenges? What did you do to overcome them? I mean, did your business get halted for a few years? What have you?
Sure. Yeah. Especially in 2008, as we saw it coming, I sort of took inventory of what I thought was going to produce me, Tom Berners was going to produce me cash flow. We looked at our business and what we had and got most of it right. And the ones that I was sure were going to keep producing cash, even those didn't produce cash. So it was a bit of a dry period. But having been through 2001 and some stuff just before that, made sure that I had a bit of a backstop. And so I had, in order to protect myself, I had lines of credit in place and I had some cash laid back. And so, which was good because when 2008 and 9 hit, of course, we had some other businesses. I owned a restaurant and did some other things. Well, we had some bridge debt out at pretty high rates. And right then the 3-month debt turned into, I don't know when this is going to be paid off or if ever. So I had to take that debt out with lines of credit. So I was taking out 18% debt with 4 to 5% money, which helped. And then that decreased down to about 3 as interest rates declined. So that was a cash flow issue at the time. And I had investors that I really needed to take care of. So I made sure they got taken care of, principal and interest. That was a big challenge. Property-wise, I don't know if any of y'all are old enough. I remember the big banners that say 3 months free and a flat screen TV. That's the kind of things people.
I remember them.
So that's what we did. We just did that. My student property flew right through the recession. I had 1 year of flat rent, not declining rent, flat rent, and it just continued to rise after that. It's done well through this COVID thing. At least my stuff has. Not all student property has. It's had its issues recently, but that did pretty well. So that was the main thing. Okay. Go back to 2001. I owned stocks in 2001. I was trying to follow all the advice of everybody, right? So I got crushed. Stock portfolio, whatever it was, got cut in half or probably worse. And so after those scars, as we got close to 2008 or whenever it was, I went ahead and just pulled everything out of the stock market and never put it back in. Yeah. Probably would have been wealthier if I had, but I never put it back in.
Got it. How about the pandemic? I know that you mentioned that it hasn't really affected your student housing units that you own, but generally speaking, the rest of your portfolio, the multifamily side, and any other assets that you have you seen any type of downward impact as a result of the pandemic?
Sure. We're probably, collections are probably down year over year, down about 1.5%, 1.5%. So they're down, which is not devastating. It's just down. Whereas they've been rising, of course, for the last bunch of years. So we've got people on payment plans. We've got people that aren't able to pay due to COVID. There's not enough of them to cause us an economic issue. But for some of our projects, we went ahead and had to suspend some distributions just because of uncertainty. We've reinstated them, but we had to be careful and be prudent so that we had enough cash to make sure we took care of what might happen. So It has been an issue. I think it dried up the pipeline. Our pipeline's a rather long process. It's not that we just find a place and make an offer and buy it. We have to identify land developers. We have a lot of moving parts. So, we actually did no deals in the first 3 quarters of 2020. We did a couple in Q4 this year. So it was a relatively lean year as far as projects, but I think it all seems to be coming out the end now. The pipeline seems to have gotten a little bit more robust.
Do you have any carryover concerns as to how this pandemic might play out in the long term, as far as long-term effects on your tenants' ability to pay rent, your ability to get debt on these new projects that you're bringing to light, any of the above?
There's always some uncertainty. We haven't identified much of it. Ours in the Class A realm, a lot of our people can work from home. It doesn't make us immune to people that can't pay.
Mm-hmm.
We are, everything that we build or buy is vetted through a process that we try to make sure that we're in a place that's got a lot of job growth. And, Texas is certainly a hotbed of job growth. We've had 370,000 people move to Texas in the last 12 months, and a bunch of those moved into Austin. So we follow the jobs. We follow Tesla and Oracle and people like that. And so that has helped. Again, doesn't make us immune, but we're always concerned about that. I'm not overly concerned with multifamily in a good location because I think we're still underbuilt and will be for a decade. So that's why we've stuck with that. Might there be downward pressure on rents? And certainly if cap rates or interest rates start to rise, there's going to be downward pressure on values. But mostly cash flow guys, although we do sell once in a while. So there's that concern, rising interest rates whenever that happens.
I know that most folks always talk about all their best deals and the ones that they just hit out of the park with, right? But we all know, being in this business for decades, that there's those particular deals, not necessarily that you maybe lost money on, but just maybe you did lose it, maybe you didn't, but they added additional gray hairs. You lost more sleep over them. The amount of stress was just monumental. So please, if there's that one deal, I'm sure there could be more than one, but that one deal that just comes to mind when I say that, what is it? What were the challenges with the deal? What'd you do to overcome them? And then what would you have done differently the next time around? Would you have found yourself in a similar situation?
Right. I wish every deal could be, full of unicorns and pixie dust, but they've all got their problems. But one always comes to mind, and we have disposed of it. But we had an out-of-state property, and our connection was, and I always take full responsibility. Our connection was somebody that I met, and so he became our point man, ended up being our broker, and also ended up being our contractor. So there's a few things you can already tell I would do different, but I thought we checked him out pretty good, but didn't really. And what happened on this project was, from the broker side, everything was okay. But from the contractor side, I think maybe somebody saw a chance to make a little extra money. And so we had, and he helped us pick our management company. So this is a personal thing. So had this person and helped us pick the management company because we were unfamiliar with that market. It's a due diligence issue on my part is what this is. So as we start going through the renovation, we're not getting enough information. We're finding out that management's just writing him checks when he says, I need a check, and no invoices, no checks. We had things in place, but management was circumventing them. The bottom of the story, I guess the point of the story is that it was a small project, 122 units, and he had touched 19 of the units, and every one of them had to be redone. And when we walked the project with him, we walked into one unit that had been invoiced 2 times and paid by management. We walked in, the unit had never been touched. And I said, well, tell me what you think. He goes, didn't you notice that you'd been paid, but this unit hadn't been touched? He goes, oh, I don't do walkthroughs. That's for the guys. So anyway, it's all my mistake, all of this. And so we had to get rid of him. We found out that management was in it with him. And so it was rough enough that management was kind enough to write us a check rather than go through some more formal methods. And we just left, and we took it over and told all our investors who made the mistake, me, and we called them all and said, look, there's an issue and may not be much in the way of distributions for a bit. We're going to make this right. And we ended up disposing of property, and over the 3 years we owned it, everybody got a 9.5% return annualized over 3 years. So that was a merciful market, saved a mistake of ours and of mine.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Exactly.
I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, it's just the vulnerability is important. I mean, it's not everything goes as planned. In fact, the deals that you think are going to be home runs end up being, maybe base hits or maybe doubles, right? And the ones that you think might be, base hits or doubles end up exceeding expectations, right? Just you can run pro formas all day long, but there's a lot of variables that you just can't control, and just is what it is. You do your best and try to cross all those T's and dot all the I's, but every once in a while something might slip through the cracks that you just you didn't foresee coming about. But so as far as due diligence, and on the due diligence side, is there another? So it's like another way to ask a similar question, I guess you could say, is I'm sure there's many opportunities that you've come about over the years that ultimately didn't make it to closing for one reason or another. Something came up during the due diligence process, during the inspections. Maybe you learned something about the immediate marketplace or neighborhood it was in that you just didn't like, couldn't get comfortable with, what have you. But what are some of those big red flags that have made you walk away from deals in the past?
I guess I'll do an example because you started talking about that. Something came to mind. We were going to do a takeout from somebody that was a developer that was building a project, and he needed to get out for various reasons. And so we started the negotiations and did back. And subsequent to the project I told you about just a few minutes ago, we're big on background checks now, and that turned up some things, and we dealt with those and had those pretty much dealt with on a contractual basis so that we could keep us and our investors insulated. And then we hired, and so this project was in process. It was framed, it was getting the skin put on and moving down the line. You know how you build apartments, you'll build one building and then just sort of trail along like this, and framers will just move like this and then the tie back, et cetera. So we hire our own construction manager to go on our dime to go up there. And the first thing they find is bad water barriers. And so we hire a water team to come out, and they say, yeah, this is going to be a problem in less than 10 years. There's going to be big issues here. And he wouldn't fix it, didn't think it was a problem, and preferred to cover it up and sell the project. So we just we got out of that project for a couple of reasons. So
is that simply put just someone cutting cost? I mean, is that all it was?
Yeah, I think cutting costs, or maybe not overseeing the project as well. Whoever was overseeing that process, the material was good. It just wasn't being used properly. And so whosever job that wasn't doing it. And when we found somebody that could oversee that, because this was just 2 buildings, so we could have stopped the process, could have remediated the issue then, and then taken it the rest of the way on the rest of the buildings, just wasn't interested. So it was attitude, I guess.
Interesting. So, Tom, given your experience, decades as a developer, you've done a little bit of everything. What advice, for someone that might be listening that has an interest in going down the development path, what advice, if you were to start all over again, what advice would you give that individual? Like any suggestions, any guidance that might help them along their way?
Sure. First, go work for somebody that's doing it. Find out if you really like it, and you start learning there, because it's a big learning curve. It's sometimes I go to bed at night wishing I could just buy something and cash flow it, like the old days when I bought a condo. But it's got its rewards. It does feel good to take a piece of dirt and have a big, it's a whole team. Obviously, we're just a certain part of the team. It's nice to see something 14 months later that's pretty and livable and something like that. So first, see if you like it. I rarely try to talk to people about development. I more talk to them about just the real estate world and the passive income and the freedom that it can provide. So if development's your thing, go hang out with somebody that's doing it and see if it's something that's up your alley.
No, I think that's great advice. I mean, what better way to learn it than actually go work it and live it, and and get all the different angles and to try to fumble through it yourself. I don't think development's not one of those things that you that you can really fumble through. It's not really, you could go, if you had some money, you could go buy an existing piece of property, and you could fumble through that. But I think it'd be a little bit more challenging, even if you had money, to fumble through a development. I just do. I think you'd find yourself maybe a year or two down the road, probably losing money and not much further along than what you were when you started, unless you've got some guidance along the way.
It takes a big team. We're still calling mentors and experts. What do you think about like that water thing? We called a company that specialized in water remediation, that sort of thing. So you're always learning something new. Every jurisdiction is different. All the laws are different. There's a lot of moving parts in it. So it's got its fun parts. It's not quite as immediate as the immediate cash flow buying something that puts off cash right away, but it's got its place in the portfolio.
So Tom, tell us about your different resources. You wrote a book, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Why Doctors Don't Get Rich. Is that it? Or maybe I don't want to butcher the title.
It is. Yeah, that's it. Why Doctors Don't Get Rich.
Okay. You've got other resources on your website as well, but maybe give us a little bit of a background on the book, what folks might expect to learn coming to your website, what have you. And also, what is that website? Where should they find you?
Sure. Oh, great. Thanks a lot. Well, this book, that title was given to me by a friend of mine. So the guy that wrote the foreword for the book's Robert Kiyosaki, and Robert wrote a book that most people know, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So it was his idea to write the book. He said, Tom, you've got a story, you ought to write a book. I said, okay. And it was him that came up with the title, and it sort of stuck the whole time. I kept looking for something that was better, but he's pretty good at coming up with titles. And so I did the subtitle myself, which is basically how you can create freedom with passive income investing. And so that's the whole premise of the book. It just started. So the premise of the title is that why doctors don't get rich, because everybody thinks, hey, you're a rich doctor, and doctors do. Doctors make a nice income. It's still really the number one income in the country on average. But we all work for our money. Doctors work for their money. There's not a thing wrong with that. But from a freedom standpoint, if you want more, if you want something like that, maybe you need to find a way to make some income that comes in while you're sleeping, vacationing, working, however you want it. So the book itself, it is basically one big guide to give guidance and hope to people to create some passive income, and then do with that what you want, whichever path you want to take. So the book's a little heavier on real estate because that's my gig, but it also talks about other things that you can do. So it's really designed to get the mind right and think about what passive investing can do for you. Then you can go from there.
Okay. And the website, is it just tomburns.com or Rich? I think Rich Doctor was also another URL that you have. Yeah,
the website's richdoctor.com. And it's easy to get to, and you can get to me at tom@richdoctor.com or hello@richdoctor.com. I've got some resources on there. I've started putting out a newsletter that's basically got sometimes a mindset article, sometimes a real estate article. I do some videos. There's a mastermind and coaching program that's going to be available to folks should they be inclined. So it's just I want it to be a resource for people that if they want to know where to go, what to do, and how to do it, there's a place there to start at least.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Tom, pleasure having you on the show. Pleasure meeting you, and I appreciate you taking the time to share all your helpful insights with the listeners here today. And so with that, I'm wishing you a incredibly successful 2021. I hope that I know that you're a big skier yourself as well. So hopefully you'll be able to get out on the slopes this year, and this pandemic won't slow us down that much longer.
Well, I appreciate it. I'll be in Calgary and in Russia this year, so I'll be on my skis in some strange places.
All righty, well, that's exciting. Well, thank you again, Tom, and guys, thank you for joining us here for this week's show. So until we meet again next week, this is your host Kevin Bupp, wishing you huge success. You take care.
Congratulations! Now you've got more of the best tricks of the trade in building massive amounts of passive income from real estate. For more amazing resources, visit realestateinvestingforcashflow.com. And we'll see you next Monday morning.